This week, we've a ringside seat for a tussle in Toronto, tablets versus teachers in Malawi, and it's a tech TKO down the gym. We all love a smart city. So around 18 months ago, when we heard that Google offshoot Sidewalk Labs was to take over an area of Toronto to build from scratch an entirely tech-first neighbourhood, well, we hightailed it over there to find out more, and excitement was in the air.
The streets will come alive with a vitality that we expect from sort of the greatest urban environments in a way that has never actually been seen before.
Ever since, it's fair to say that things have not gone entirely to plan. Mark Chislak has been back to Toronto to get the latest on the project.
Toronto, Canada's largest city, its waterfront is undergoing redevelopment. Sidewalk Labs, a subsidiary of Alphabet, the sister company to tech giant Google, has partnered with Waterfront Toronto, an agency set up by local government to manage the whole redevelopment. Sidewalk originally had plans to build a so-called smart city on a 12-acre site in the rebuilt area. 307 is Sidewalk's test facility, where ideas for this new development are prototyped.
So what you're looking at right here is a prototype for a new paving system for our streets. This one's actually a permeable paver. Here the water actually goes into the paver down into the ground itself. Up here what you see is actually a solar panel, testing some integration of lights into the pavers themselves.
Jesse Shapins is the Director of Urban Design at Sidewalk Labs. He's showing off some of the tech that it's testing before the company begins construction on the Quayside project.
This one is testing a heating system embedded in the pavers, and then we just heat the paver just enough so that there's no ice that forms. It's something that we call the building raincoat. For example, that it's quite a sunny day, it can adapt and provide more shade. If there's more rain, it can change and adapt to those conditions.
Sidewalk's plans include robotic refuse collection and self-driving taxis, all assisted by a host of different sensors embedded in the neighbourhood. The whole endeavour will be driven by data about the weather, data about the number of pedestrians and vehicles, and it's this use of data that's creating rising concerns in locals. There are just a couple of problems with this sci-fi sounding project. Number one, it's way behind schedule, which isn't unusual for redevelopment efforts. But number two, in a climate where the public is increasingly distrustful of big tech companies, do the people of Toronto now even want this plan to go ahead? Block Sidewalk is a local campaign group which opposes Sidewalk's plans.
They're doing all of this planning, they're bamboozling people with fairy stories about nice paving stones, and but the fundamental issues is this for our benefit or Alphabet's shareholders' benefit, never get answered, and I think I smell quite a large rat there.
Trying to build a neighborhood at the heart of Toronto on the waterfront that is filled with sensors and technology that will be able to collect our data, our every move, is something that is very concerning to a lot of people. How will our children be consenting to sharing their data and their behavioral data? These are all kind of questions that I think a lot of people have in mind.
Questions like these have increased tensions, and scrutiny of the whole project has intensified after several members of its advisory board resigned over privacy concerns. The project is also now facing a challenge in the courts. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is suing 3 different levels of government as well as Waterfront Toronto over plans for the tech-driven development. Michael, what is it that Sidewalk is proposing that the CCLA is unhappy with or opposes?
What we're unhappy with is that a private company is self-regulating in an area that involves people's constitutional rights, their privacy, and their dignity. What the government in Canada and Ontario and Toronto has done is said, Sidewalk Labs, you figure out how to act in the public interest. You self-regulate the way in which you're going to be collecting and storing data. And we, those of us who live in Toronto or walk anywhere near or through this part of the waterfront, we're the lab rats. And number one, we never signed up for this. Number two, there's no jurisdiction for Waterfront Toronto to do this. And number three, there's no protection whatsoever by law of the data that's being collected and manipulated and stored and used in whatever form it's going to be used.
Privacy and data. There are some huge concerns around privacy and especially data, about what happens to it, who is going to manage it, governance, who has oversight of that data.
What I would say is that this project is fundamentally about protecting everyone's privacy. It's built on the established laws we already have in Canada. So it's not us actually that is planning to manage or make money off the data in this neighborhood. It's actually proposed that it is an independent, nonprofit, public sector entity, something we've called an urban data trust, that would take responsibility for managing the use and collection of data in this place.
Sidewalk Labs has just submitted its 1,000-page-long master plan document that outlines what it has in store for the Quayside project in more detail. Waterfront Toronto will need to closely examine the paperwork, and they've said they're going to open it up for public discussion.
I think that you have sort of a perfect storm of timing, players, actors, and a pressure point of a project that could be a lighthouse of how you solve these issues if we get it right. If we get it wrong, then that would not be good.
As more people become aware of the kind of data that's captured by big tech outfits and how it's used, concerns around privacy mean decisions made in Toronto could end up having ramifications for future smart city projects around the world.
That was Mark. Big tech companies offering services for free in return for data. It's a familiar theme from Toronto to Timbuktu. Originating in Silicon Valley, for some, this type of business transaction has come to define the age we live in, and its consequences, good and bad, are only just beginning to shake down. Jen Copestake's been looking at some of the most influential thinking in what's being described as surveillance capitalism.
We freely give out our personal data every day through the apps on our phones, conversations with smart home assistants, or other so-called smart devices like toothbrushes and vacuums. It seems like an inevitable and perhaps even cheap price to pay for living in a digitally connected world, giving us access to free services like Google's search and maps, and social media sites like Facebook. But the data we are giving away for free about our everyday lives is very valuable, and its exploitation is the basis of a new economic paradigm, which author Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism. She presented her book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, in Cambridge, also known as the UK's Silicon Valley.
What surveillance capitalism does is it claims private human experience. Private human experience is unilaterally claimed to be brought into the marketplace, where it is translated into behavioral data.
This behavioral data is combined with machine learning and artificial intelligence to create predictions of what people are going to do with their day and what they might buy. Professor Zuboff details how this capability to make money from behavioral data was first discovered by Google when the company was struggling in the wake of the dot-com crash at the turn of the millennium. To boost ad revenue, Google mined its own exclusive data logs for the digital exhaust of people's online search behavior. Google worked out that this extraneous data was valuable, and with the ability to process large amounts of data came the ability to discern trends in people's behavior. This led to the creation of highly tailored online advertising.
Everyone is familiar with this. You go online and you search for tennis shoes, and then the next day you've got ads for tennis shoes all over your pages. Well, those advertisers are buying Google's predictions about what we're going to do in the future.
Professor Zuboff says these predictions have opened up a world where companies are even able to experiment with modifying human behavior without our knowledge.
In 2016, Google's spin-off Niantic created the wildly successful augmented reality game Pokemon Go, where people would run around collecting different kinds of Pokemons.
And while it seemed on the surface to be cute and benign, Professor Zuboff says the game was designed as a large-scale experiment to see how people could be herded towards commercial targets and collect data from its users.
Pokemon Go figured out how to direct us, always out of our awareness, exactly to those places where Pokemon Go would get paid for our footfall. So it was an experimental laboratory on a giant scale for the kind of surveillance capitalism that learns to intervene into our behavior, to direct it to the places that make the most money for surveillance capitalists and their business customers. The most predictive behavior comes from actually intervening in people's behavior, intervening in your real life, intervening in the state of play, and subtly, always designed to be outside of your awareness, subtly shaping your experience.
Professor Zuboff is asking us to consider the subtle implications of surveillance capitalism on our lives, comparing it with the impact of industrial capitalism. Industrial capitalism may have left a mark on our natural environment, but perhaps we need to consider how, left unchecked, surveillance capitalism could impact on our human nature.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that Facebook announced its new cryptocurrency called Libra. This will allow smartphone payments across the world and will be governed by companies including MasterCard, Visa, Uber and Spotify. Some lawmakers have already raised concerns. Google released a new tool to let YouTubers virtually test out different looks. The feature, called AR Beauty Try-On, snappy, follows L'Oreal's recent AR partnership with Amazon. And Huawei founder Ren Zhengfei said international sales of its handsets had sunk 40% in the past month. The firm plans to slash production by $30 billion as fallout from its US blacklist continues. Samsung has advised customers to scan for viruses every few weeks to prevent malicious software attacks. It shared, and now deleted, an extensive how-to video which might have put some off owning a smart TV at all. The first Tesla pickup in the world, called the Truckler, isn't made by Elon Musk. US engineer and YouTuber Simone Guyette modified a Tesla Model 3, even adding extra tech so she could weld on the road. Don't worry, Guyette unplugged the car's 12-volt battery before surgery, so the car felt nothing. And finally, MIT scientists are teaching a robot how to feel an object just by looking at it. The researchers say this will help the robot grip better when lifting things, like the handle of a mug. Mine's a tea with 2 sugars, please.
These days, fitness gadgets are about so much more than just tracking our activity. Yes, of course, they want to make us exercise more, but they also aim to help us get injured less, and sometimes even have a spot of fun too.
Some of the latest gadgets certainly don't pull any punches.
A set of connected boxing gloves. Now the sensors are embedded here in the wraps. There's one in each hand, so they can track how many punches you make and also the force of those punches.
It's 8 rounds, so take a deep breath in.
FightCam hopes to get you fighting fit by running you through a variety of workouts in the app. The accelerometer-based sensors track your moves in real time, recognising the difference between the warm-up exercises and when you're pulling a punch. Probably a good job this was a one-way match, as my lack of skill was pointed out by a professional boxer who happened to be to hand. OK, this is how you do it. Although the wraps are the pivotal part of the kit, there are options for an entire setup with punch bag too. How good at teaching boxing do you think this is for someone who's never boxed before and is just trying to take up exercise?
I think if they start off by kind of doing it at the lower level, because obviously it has levels. So start at the lower level until that becomes comfortable, just like anything else. It's going to take time, it's going to take dedication, but it's easily accessible to learn, as long as you take the time.
Or maybe you'd prefer a simpler spot of weightlifting. This is a connected kettlebell, and it has 6 different weights built into one device. You can change them by just pressing the button.
Jack's Jocks uses a rotating weight stacking system. It locks in the number of plates needed to create your chosen weight, ranging from 5.5 to 19 kilograms. One charge of the device will last you up to 14 days.
It syncs to a mobile phone app where you can keep track of all of the sets and reps that you've done, as well as note how much rest you've taken. And then you can keep on competing against yourself.
Meanwhile, away from the blood, sweat and tears of this gym, I've been looking at something a little more scientific too.
Here at the University of Brighton's Sports Science Physiology Lab, there's all sorts of kit, and this rather intimidating looking treadmill could be used to help analyse my gait. But instead of doing that, we're going to head outside with these, which are the Gait Up sensors. Now inside them there's a gyroscope, an accelerometer, even a barometer. But it's not about the hardware, it's the data that they're actually collecting which is important, and how that can be analysed to help me move better.
And the new algorithms doing that are being used here for a collaboration called the Sub-2 project to try and help elite runners break the 2-hour marathon mark.
Let's go.
It seems I wasn't quite as wonky as I thought I was.
When we look at your data, you're like, okay, you're quite a fit and good runner. Not elite for sure, but not at specific risk. So anything that we would do is fine-tuning.
My colleague says that I run like an elephant. Do I not run like an elephant? Can I tell her I don't run like an elephant after
They might think that visually it's the case, but the data show it's not the case.
Visually the case.
Oh dear. But the analytics, and that's the new bit here, not the hardware, do provide a clear report of your running. Contact time, strike and asymmetry are the focus factors, allowing professional level tracking for consumers. Although with a current price tag of 1,500 quid, I can't imagine them hitting the mainstream just yet. And whilst much of this tech may just seem over-engineered and overpriced, maybe it's just early days for a fully connected workout experience that can really pack a punch.
That was Lara. Now, it was an outrageous amount of money to give away for a competition, a $10 million prize. But some would say it's a small price to pay because the challenge was to find the best way to teach children remotely. The Global Learning X Prize, as it was named, was the brainchild of Elon Musk. Its aim was to develop a way to teach children maths and literacy in their own language, which could deliver results at least as good as they would have been if they'd had the chance to go to class. The results have been impressive. Last month in Los Angeles, 2 winners were announced, picking up $5 million each from Elon himself. Well, Dan's been back to Africa to talk to one of them about what they achieved and what might be next.
The walk to school and back to where it all began. It was here in this village where 7 years ago, 1 Billion handed out its first devices, before any of these children were born. Some of them are still in use. Andrew's charity is now working with partners in South Africa, Uganda, the UK, Tanzania, as well as across Malawi, but to its founder, this place is special, as is winning the X Prize.
On a personal level, we just felt enormous gratitude. We've built on the expertise of so many people from around the world. Obviously, $5 million is very, very useful. It's really given us this opportunity to show that we have a quality product that can achieve this recognition from X Prize.
In Tanzania, tablets were given out to 4,000 schoolless children in 150 villages, most of whom scored 0 when tested in maths and literacy at the start of the trial. 18 months on, and the results were stark, in many cases better than would have been expected if they'd gone to school. and interestingly, with little difference in results between boys and girls.
I think it's the biggest educational learning trial anywhere in the world. We saw children making very significant gains in letter recognition, in reading words, in maths, recognising numbers, number discriminations. What this shows to us is that there is a solution to the global learning crisis.
Those positive results are reflected here in these 30-minute community sessions held at this village house.
I have a daughter, Praise.
Yes.
In past, she was not doing well in mathematics, but when the gadgets came, she is doing good in school.
Schools in Malawi, you get one classroom with over 150 children. I know of one school where there's 200 and 250 children in one classroom. If you put in place, for example, what we're doing here, using the tablets, it will actually ease the tension in class.
Can you imagine how many hours it takes to mark 250?
So you have a lesson of 30 minutes and then 4 hours for marking.
Yeah, yeah.
1 Billion is launching a new, robust, low-cost tablet, building on what they've learnt so far.
These tablets often can be damaged by the USB plug. If someone doesn't know you've got to put them in one way round, they can force it and it can break. So we use a magnetic connector rather than a USB, and it can be charged from solar. Now, this adapts to the child.
The software now has a chaos startup mode where it can assess the abilities of any child that picks it up in the background and build a learning plan on the fly. Andrew's keen to work with education officials and experts on the ground, allowing them to tailor the curriculum to each community.
You say you're keen to work with partners. Would that be any partner? If Google or Microsoft comes along with a large amount of cash, would you welcome that?
We believe that the child, particularly at primary school, needs to be in a sanctuary where they're not being observed and data is being extracted about them. I mean, all of us know that big tech companies are gathering data on all of us now. I mean, Google probably knows where we're sitting now in the middle of Malawi, and that information is monetized. I am fearful. I think we must protect children from being seen as a product in any way.
An hour's drive north of Lilongwe and the potential for this software becomes clear. Dzaleka refugee camp is home to almost 40,000 fleeing war or famine. Here, 1 Billion's partner, VSO, is delivering hour-long classes. This is Integrity Church in the heart of the refugee camp. About 50 or so children are here. The tablets have been in for about a month. It's a little too early to assess the progress, but the interest, you just have to look at the faces. The X Prize has shown this open source software works and that it's one of the best at delivering results. Given the right funding, it seems hard to imagine why tablet schooling won't become more widely adopted.
That was down in East Africa. What a fabulous story that was. That's it for this week. Next week we have a special programme on the subject of sustainable tech. Can't wait for that. In the meantime, you can join us on social media throughout the week on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. @BBC Collector is the address. Thanks for watching and we'll see you soon.